putting down something feels like the biggest decision of your life. It's a major decision, but the thing was that, that desire for ownership is something that you talk about. It's part of the North American dream, right? You come out here, you want to have a home of your own. And so for the last few years, I've been in a condo where I absolutely love living there. So it's like I said, it's my sanctuary. So I absolutely love it. You need to have something called an asset. You need to start getting to the point where you're actually breaking even. You're starting to have some savings, and then you start saying, okay, now that I have some money and I can see some money coming down the pipeline, where am I going to go with this? Where am I going to put my money to have some sort of options in the future? How am I going to actually build something called wealth? In that sense, it made the most sense to me because at the end of the day, I find real estate is one of the most stable long-term investments that anybody can make. How am I going to be able to put down the amount of money that I need for investment property? Do the numbers. Get yourself comfortable and then take a plunge, because one thing I will say is this, and again, coming from a risk management background, the answer is this. You have a risk to lose money. You have a risk to gain money. If you do absolutely nothing, you're guaranteed 100% you're going to lose money.
Hello everyone, this is Neeraj. So today we are going to talk about, actually talking to a person, he's a good friend of mine as well. Hey, have a long-term relationship. But let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Mr. Srinivas Chari. Hello.
Hey Neeraj, how's it going?
I am good. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Day's going good?
Day's going great.
Cool. Okay. So, for the people, those who obviously don't know you, would you like to, maybe handful.
Sure.
Would you like to introduce yourself and tell them your backstory, who you are, where you're from, and how you ended up in Toronto?
Okay, well, it's a bit of a long story. So I was born in Mumbai, India, and I came to Canada about 25 years ago with an intention to do my master's in computer science.
So you came as a student?
I came as a student.
Okay, so shout out to all the students, those who are thinking you gotta pay attention.
Yeah. Immigrant, international student, the whole shebang, and I showed up and I went to University of Calgary and I studied over there, and I planned on doing a PhD and I wanted to teach, but then I decided somewhere through that I thought it was better to go into a regular career as opposed to staying in academics for a variety of reasons that are just not relevant for this conversation. But
in a way I can tell you this. Now, first of all, there's two international students, two immigrants, but at the same time teaching. Technically, you're teaching today.
Well, I wanted to teach. I wanted to be a professor.
More formal.
University
Right.
Like a professor in university. So that was my goal when I came here.
Right.
But then I decided I wanted to do something different, and I took a job in Toronto in 2001.
Okay.
I joined IBM as a software developer.
Okay.
Right. So I'm, like I said, background in computer science, so a very strong technical background. I did my undergraduate in Bits-Pilani in India, for those who know what that is. So came here, like I said, plenty of years of education. Started working. But a few years after that, I decided to change course from development. I wanted to try out consulting and just trying to try a different tack, and I joined a consulting firm.
Okay.
And I got my first introduction, my first work assignment in a bank, and that was my first introduction to financial services.
Which I guess a lot of Indians, those who come as an IT, they get bank as their first client, isn't it?
As it was in this case, it happened to be the case for me as well, and so I started off at BMO. I've worked
very unique, right? Just in curiosity.
Very unique. The difference was that I seem to have some sort of an aptitude. So despite having a computer science background, I seem to have a banking aptitude.
Okay.
And so I've been in banking with a small stint in insurance for about 6 months.
Okay.
Since 2005, pretty much I've been in banking all the way through, and I'm still at the bank right now.
Still at bank.
So I went through a variety of different roles. I was a business analyst. I led testing, UAT, production work. So I did all the financial returns for the bank.
And you're still working full time?
I now work full time. I became an independent contractor for a few years.
Okay.
But I switched to full time about a year ago.
Okay.
At the same bank I was consulting at, they gave me an offer, and so now I run risk operations for them. So I'm in risk management.
Okay.
So like I said, it's been an interesting journey, and I'm not quite sure where the future is going to take me, but let's see where it goes.
Okay,
So
but let's switch gears, and then we can go back to from your history to how you get to the real estate. I mean, how, when, really anything you remember, you can talk about like your introduction to real estate.
So I'll think of it this way. I mean, you rent and you rent and you rent until you finally say, sometime
Right.
I just hope that I can actually own the place that I live in. Because
I mean, you need a guts for that, or you need money for that, or you need a decision for that?
all three.
All three. Okay.
All three. So meaning, let's put it this way. Why? Because everyone wants to, but then when you have to put the money down, you're obviously, it feels like a risk because when you don't have a lot of money, putting down something feels like the biggest decision of your life.
Indeed,
So
it is. Yeah.
it's a major decision, but the thing was that, that desire for ownership is something that you come. It's part of the North American dream, right? You come out here, you want to have a home of your own, and you start there. But then, so I started out in a condo. At some point, I upgraded and switched over to a home, and then due to various personal circumstances, I walked out of that home. I switched out. I went back to a condo, and so for the last few years, I've been in a condo where I absolutely love living there. So it's like I said, it's my sanctuary. So I absolutely love it. But along the lines, I mean, living is one thing, but then at some point, I decided, you know what? Obviously, your own home is one thing, but if you looked at the different forms of thing, and once you start having, you need to have something called an asset. You need to start getting to the point where you're actually breaking even. You're starting to have some savings, and then you start saying, okay, now that I have some money and I can see some money coming down the pipeline, where am I going to go with this? Where am I going to put my money to have some sort of options in the future? How am I going to actually build something called wealth? Because I don't think anybody comes to Canada to just be mediocre and just be average and just survive on.
Are you start thinking about telling me you were start thinking about investing in real estate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So in real estate I was just thinking of investing. So the question was, are you going to put it into mutual funds? Are you going to put it into stocks? Are you going to put it in these? Or are you going to put it into real estate? So real estate was, in that sense, it made the most sense to me because at the end of the day, I find real estate is one of the most stable long-term investments that anybody can make.
Right.
Now that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. So there are many people who will tell me that I'm crazy, and that's okay.
So wait a second. When you say stable, long term, what does that what does that mean for you? Like a long term?
So I'm talking about. I mean, my goal is to have real property as long as I live.
Okay, so you're keeping
for me,
buy the property and hold
buy
as
and
long
hold,
as you can.
but not necessarily the same property, because at some point it may
True.
be meant,
Okay.
it may be appropriate to buy a home, use it for investment purposes, build a certain amount of equity from there, build a certain amount, obviously due to appreciation, and obviously right now you're seeing a bit of a correction, but let's not forget, historically speaking, real estate has always moved up long term. So some ups and downs may be there,
Of course.
but stability wise, the return on investment that you get in real estate is very hard to match in any other form of investment. So whether you're talking stocks, bonds, any of those kind of things, anything in the money markets, anything in just stock exchanges, any of that sort of stuff, there obviously are some cases people make incredible amounts of money.
Right.
But if you're looking at something that a layperson can understand and get a bigger grasp of, I find real property is far more valuable. Like I said, that's my opinion, and obviously even though I work at a bank and there are plenty of products that are offered, that should be something that is part of your portfolio, but I would definitely make sure that you have at least some real estate, because I think that's a cornerstone to having stability, especially in Canada. There's plenty of land to build. There's plenty of scope as more and more
And
people
plus
are
there's
coming
more
in.
people coming,
More and more
immigrants
people are coming in. The
yeah.
number of immigrants coming.
They need
Real
a space to
property. People may say what they want to about Toronto and the stock markets. I mean, the prices of the homes are crashing. Blah blah blah.
Sure.
Well, they went up 50%. You dropped 20%. You're still doing pretty fine. So at the end of the day, long run, this is going to continue because the number of people who are coming in, that we're going to need 1.523 million homes, which means properties are going to get built.
Right.
Governments are now pushing for more properties to be built. So as someone who's thinking investment, this is definitely a place to be seriously focusing on.
Right. Okay.
Right?
So let me take back and say, if I can take you back when you were thinking about buying your investment property.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Were you did you have concern? Were you like any fear? Anything was like holding you back?
Well, think of it this way. Having your own home, for most people, that itself is quite a challenge to just maintain, have the money, because very often you're in a hand-to-mouth situation. So people are always struggling, saying, how am I going to be able to put down the amount of money that I need for investment property? Because your own home, sometimes, depending on first home buyer and so on, there may be certain incentives, and you may not need to put as much money down. You may be able to get certain forms of assistance.
But you still have to qualify looking at the mortgage.
You have to qualify and everything. But
and
that's
especially when we have now not just the higher mortgage
now it's
interest rate,
stress rates.
but the stress test is on top of it.
Yep, and the extra 2% plus. So right now the numbers are high. So I get that for someone who's got their first property, thinking about an investment property can be onerous because you still have to meet all those requirements, but you also need bare minimum 20+%. So an investment property, you have to have the money to put it down. Now the question is, where do you get that? Now I don't want to. I'm no expert in this. So obviously, they should be asking you.
But
this
let me
question.
ask you, what did you do?
Well, I took equity out of my home property.
Okay, so
So
you bought the property, you took the equity, you refinanced the property.
That's right.
And then you are able to manage your down payment.
Oh yes.
And
Yeah.
obviously, when you took the money or equity out from your property, then your mortgage went up as well.
Of course.
Okay, so how are you able to mitigate that part?
Well, again, because it's an investment, right? So one of the things that I thought was that if I can take the equity out of my property because of the price appreciation, yes, I picked up a chunk of mortgage that I'm going to be paying.
Right.
But I'm going to be able to put that into a new property, and that property will largely start paying a significant component of its own mortgage because
Right.
I'm going to be renting it out.
Right.
Right? And so once you have a renter and you're able to collect that kind of money, now I am putting in some money. So
Okay.
at the end of the day, this is an investment. So expecting to put in zero into a property and expecting it to grow it may happen for some people, but I would not count on it.
It's not practical.
I would say that you should budget for a certain amount
So-
of money to invest.
so-
Because it's an investment.
Right. So would you be open to talk about where did you buy it? What did you buy?
So I bought a condo in downtown Toronto.
Down in Toronto.
Now,
So which is like a hub? Is it okay to
it's
say?
very central. I mean, this is about
Like a
as
core?
downtown core central as you get. This is like I said, this is on the waterfront, so right in
Right.
front of the CN Tower. So it's a beautiful location. So one thing I do know is resale value, no problem. Getting it to rent, absolutely no problem, because when people just come in and look at the view, they say, "I want this."
Right.
So it's a no-brainer. Obviously, in terms of rental price and so on, that's a separate conversation.
But here's the thing. But
not worried about that.
lot of people also think if I'm buying a condo in downtown Toronto, 98% of the time people think, hey, you know what? I don't think so. I'll be able to cover my mortgage with the rent which I'm going to receive. Now, on your perspective, are you break even? Are you positive?
I'm a little bit
negative?
short.
Negative
but
on
a little
the
bit.
side. Okay.
But again, that's because of the market conditions because of COVID.
Right.
Prior to COVID, I would have actually been making some money.
Also, pre-COVID, you were making money. and
Pre-COVID,
COVID kind
I bought the property during COVID time.
Oh.
So pre-COVID was higher and it dropped. But again, I said it's okay because the long term,
right.
I'll catch up. So once
But
I-
now we know that market is actually catching up right now, and your property is already rented out. So the tenant is already there,
right.
but you rented out during COVID as well.
Yep.
So I'm assuming the rent right now is a below market rent where your
Yes,
property.
it is below right now.
is
But
below right
it'll catch up.
It'll catch up.
Because eventually the person who's renting will move on, and then the new person will then be at market rate. So it'll be I can catch up at that point. So it's not a big deal.
Right. Okay. So let's go back to your hesitation, your fears.
Well, obviously, making a big decision about this, you think about it 500 times, right? Especially if you're risk averse and you've not done a lot of investment and you don't come from a money background where you've struggled to make payments for anything and everything.
And plus
I
for
was
the
not-
banking too, right?
And I was, and you have the extra. Now your banker is like, okay, we're risk averse, extra risk, a little more conservative. Take three things. Okay, think 5 times. As they say, as a Taylor community says, right? Measure twice, then cut once. So we are like banking is like measure 15 times, double check it, then think about it.
And I think about it. That's right.
Right?
Okay.
So there's always a hesitancy to put money down.
Okay.
But at some point I said, look, if I'm going to have an asset,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to have to put my money where my thoughts are.
So in other words, you had a fear, but at the same time you also had an understanding that you actually have to take some action.
You have to take action because, and you
Okay.
think of it this way, I'm in risk management, which means risk is guaranteed in life. If I do not put the money in, I guarantee I'm getting nothing from it.
Okay.
But if I put the money in, there is a chance I'll make some money. Yes. Is there a chance I'll have a loss? Yes. Is there a chance I'll make a lot of money? Yes. The chances of me making money in a downtown property are significantly higher than me losing money on it.
Okay.
Why? I may have to put some money for the first few years, but I will also get price appreciation. So I thought, okay, even if I'm putting in $500 or $1,000 a month and I'm going higher, but if I have to put in a decent sized investment and if I have that kind of disposable income and I'm able to put that down, that means that over the next 5 years, I put in $50,000-$60,000. I'm going higher numbers. But if the property appreciates by $200,000-$300,000 in the same time, well, guess what? $60,000 of investment, $300,000 of return. That's a 4 to 5 times return. Where are you going to get that in the market?
Right.
So even if it doesn't go that high and it goes up to 100,000, I'm still 40,000 in positive.
Okay.
It's still a gain. It's still an excellent return on investment.
So seems like, so let me ask you, so based on what you're telling me this, would you be investing again in the market? Would you still be going there?
At the right time, yes.
You're right. Okay, do you have a game plan?
I have a game plan.
Okay, but when at the same time, a lot of people talk about like tenants and the tenant spheres, like that. I call it like a
Always.
TNT, like a toilets and tenant, right? Do you actually have to deal with like toilets, like like middle of the night to 2 a.m. or something? The toilet broke down.
I've only had one time when
take the plunger. You actually
I never had to take the plunger. I did not have to do that. So one of the things is in my case, because it's here, in my case I rent to professionals.
Okay.
So very often you run into that kind of a situation where you have students who claim to have no clue how any of the stuff works except how to break it. So that's a separate conversation if you're renting a home versus a condo, and if it's depending on where it is,
Right.
then sometimes you have, if you have a condo, let's say near a university, then it's a good likelihood you will get tenants who are students.
Right.
And then sometimes you may have some of that stuff. But there are ways to mitigate. Now again, if you're a first time investor, there's a very different thing. If you happen to have 3-4 properties, then you can actually get a property manager to deal with all that, and you can outsource all that for you, because you're looking at that point to make significant long-term rental income. So when you start getting into that kind of a league, that's a very different thing. I'm not there yet. Like I have one property. So for me, it's not like I have 5-6 investment properties where I can afford to go and say, okay, I'll pay a few $100s to a PM and they will take care of all these issues and collect the rent and take care of all that stuff for me, which saves me all the headaches. But that's when you can actually get to that point.
So you're saying that after 3-4 properties, once you have it, you may like hire a property manager to
Most
take care
likely,
of
yes, because I don't want to deal with the headache.
Right.
Right? So for me, that's the whole point, right? Because if I can put my resources and my efforts into generating more wealth elsewhere, which affords me paying somebody else, which is also good because someone else is making money too. So
Right.
you spread the joy, right? So it's
Have you gone through like a multiple, like 2 or 3 like cycles of like a tenant came and left and
Yes.
then you have to hire another?
So yeah, so I've had to go through multiple cases. I think I'm on my third or my fourth tenant right now.
Third or fourth. But how do you screen tenants though?
Well, I use you as my realtor, but
okay.
but I would say that for those who, I mean, if you think about what are the key factors you look at, you obviously want to make sure that they're employed.
Right.
In my case, right? So my profile that
You
I'm
said,
looking
like,
for,
professionals and always- yeah.
I'm looking for professionals. I'm looking for reasonably high income. For to live downtown, to be able to pay that kind of thing, they have to be able to support it. So either
Sure.
single or couple. I'm not really looking right now to get families, because in any case downtown most of the time you don't really end up with people with small families, sometimes small families, but very rarely will you get, because it's a relatively small place.
Right.
So downtown condo, it's not like you have 1,500 square feet where you can have plenty of folks. So
Right.
it's
Not
you
the
can-
parents and the grandparents.
it's going to be small,
Right.
small
More
nuclear kind of
professionals, yes.
professionals. Obviously you're going to have to understand the credit score. Maybe talk about to their screen, like you could talk to their previous landlords to get a sense of how they were as tenants. Did they have any grief? Would they take them back if they came back to their
Yeah.
and so on, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Now, if people, those who are like out of the audience, I don't know, maybe like 10 people are watching, or maybe 1,000 people watching this. Somebody who's sitting on a sideline thinking about, hey, you know what? Is it a good time to buy the property? Should I start investing? Is real estate investing is a good idea? Would you have any recommendation or any suggestion for them?
Oh, definitely. I put it this way: as soon as you are in a reasonable financial position, get in the game. Don't try and time the market because you're thinking long term. If you're looking to get in and get out and just perfectly time it, I don't know if real estate is the right choice for you. Like you might want to do into things like mutual funds or stock market where you try and time it and whatever. That's different, right? But for real estate, if you look at what we're dealing with today, right now the market is supposedly down. But
Yeah,
if
we
you're
are talking
talking
about like
15-20% down compared to
You're talking about August, September of 2022. Right now, the mortgage interest rate is like higher, which has actually gone. That is not so high, never in it, but still.
It's not been high for the last so many years.
so
But
many.
if you go back 30
points.
years or so, 30, 40 years ago, people were paying 22% interest on mortgages.
Right.
So if you compare that, people think that 22% on credit cards is bad. Try that on a mortgage, right? So very different kind of a deal where there were foreclosures, there were all kinds of all those problems.
Right.
But that's not the case right now. Even right now, the market now, the numbers are still very, very low. Just because people are used to zero interest does not mean that 5% is the end of the world, right? Like it's actually more normal over the lifetime of Canada to have a number between 5 to 10% than to be lower or higher.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're actually in a relatively normal stage. Yeah, even if the bank bumps up, even if the Bank of Canada bumps it up another 75 basis points, even 1%, you are still looking at ranges around 5, 6, 7%, right? Depending on what your credit ratings are and so on. So if you're getting in that range, you are still in a place where you can afford to get into the game because these prices will continue to rise. You've got 500,000 people coming to Canada every single year. Most of them come to the GTA. So if you're going to buy property here, it's just going to get more expensive every year. So the best time to get into it as soon as you can afford to buy it.
Yeah.
Obviously, work your numbers up.
Yeah.
Understand your financials. Understand that you're not trying to put yourself in a place where you're in the mood to buy a house, so you're going to buy it and you find that you can't afford it, where you're skipping saying, I'm not going to do my laundry and I'm not going to do grocery because I want to live in a home. You're not ready for a home then.
I mean,
that's my view.
But from your conversation, one thing is for sure. I mean, when as a realtor, like a lot of real estate talks, and it says the 5%, 6% is an okay mortgage interest rate. I mean, I'm talking to somebody who's at a pure banking, who understand the numbers coming from analyzing the numbers all day
That's
long.
What we do risk management.
Not just a mortgage broker, by the way, not a mortgage broker, not a realtor, but who actually understand the numbers from the economic point of view, like what happens in the system and what the history talks or history told us, like what the numbers look like.
We look back at many years in the past.
Right. I mean, I think you are the one of those guys who actually analyze the numbers like from a inside. You're a banker, inside banker. Okay. So who talks about the numbers that are understanding that? I mean,
we're actually interest rates wise, we are actually still in a very good space.
Yeah.
Right. So people should realize that just because we got used to the 0% easy rates does not mean that they should be there or that they will be there. Yeah. Right. So there's a chance that this number could go up to 7-8%, then it might come back down because things go plus minus. One thing that we can be reasonably confident of is governments will never let that percentage of interest go into double digits and much more than that. Right now, the way the political climate is, it'll never allow for that. So they will find some way to keep those numbers down, which means you're still in a fairly comfortable space interest rate wise. So I would not worry too much about that, because one of the other things is that maybe the government will be easing off on some of the stress test requirements. They may do that, right? Meaning, again, this is all speculation, but meaning what might happen is that you may not need to qualify at 9 and 10%, but what if you had to qualify at 9-10%? You're still looking at an asset that over the lifetime of 15-20 years, let's say, we're not talking about 2-3 years, we said 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and a property that you own for investment purposes, you are thinking longer term, right? At that point, you will make that money back, right? And yes, you will have
multiple times.
Could be multiple times, but definitely there'll be a significant appreciation long term, because again, it's like a demand and supply situation.
Right.
The demand is not going to go down. With 300,000 people coming to this area, every single year, you're going to have, just think 10 years from now, you're talking 3 more million people. Right. Okay? Now, if you talk 3 million people, even if you have 3 people per household, that's 1 million new homes required on top of everything that everybody has here, not including any other form of cross-province migration.
Right.
And that's just in the GTA alone. Now, if you can expand that and you think around the country, you're looking at large numbers of people all over. So real estate is something that it's here to stay. People come and say they've been predicting crashes left, right, and center. I mean, if what we're dealing with is a crash, let's take a step back and look over the last 30 years what kind of prices and where prices were, how much a home was. When I was a student in Calgary, a home you could consider buying at $130,000.
Right.
Right? And that looked like a mountain, saying, oh my God, 130,000. Today you can't even get a bathroom for 130,000. So anyone in the country, right? So it's that change in over time, things will appreciate because there's inflation, but there's also growth. And as more numbers of people come in, there's more reselling, there's more wealth that can be made.
Right.
So to me, one of the cornerstones of long-term stable wealth is based on real property. I would not say put all your eggs in real estate either. I'm not saying put all of it in stock markets. I would say based on your risk appetite, how much risk can you tolerate? How much fluctuation can you tolerate?
Yeah.
And if you're someone who can't tolerate, the notion of a price going up and down too much, real estate is actually far more stable, because very often it may correct for a while and it may stay low for a while, but then it eventually come back up. So what will happen is at the end of the day, you at least
So
have
that is
something to
only
hold on
if
to.
you don't sell when the low tides come. You don't sell the property.
Wait it out.
There's nothing happens.
Just stay patient, because look, if it's an investment property and you're still able to rent it out, what are you worried about? They're helping you pay your mortgage. You're building equity all the time.
Sure.
You're always building equity. At the minimum, you're saving money. At the minimum, you're investing. Someone is helping you pay for an investment.
Right.
And so if it's an investment property, you are building equity every single month. So long as there's some principal payment going through,
Right.
you're fine. You're not doing an interest-only mortgage.
Yeah.
So if you're doing with sufficient principal that's being paid in, you're always going to come out forward. So it's a forced saving anyway. Even in the worst case, you force yourself to save money.
Of course.
And in a good case, you're making income and saving money. In the best case, you're seeing the price appreciation and you're making money from the tenants because the rent is higher than you're actually paying for your mortgage and your other expenses.
Right.
And therefore, it's paid for completely. So that's the best scenario. Now, you can always hope for the best, but in the absolute worst as well, you are still putting some money down, you are still saving for a rainy day. It'll still pay you in the long run.
So, Srini, thank you very much for your time. And you know what? I mean, there's no better way of saying what you said it. I mean, from an investor perspective, what you know of,
Yeah.
I wish you all the best, and I
Thank
wish
you.
you tons of properties in the future, and obviously, big good wealth with there as well. But thank you very much for sharing that information. That's truly appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope it helps some of the viewers and anyone sitting on the fence
At least
wondering,
one
should I,
person.
should I not?
At least one person.
Even if it's one person who thinks,
Yeah.
should I not?
Yeah.
Do the numbers.
Yeah.
Get yourself comfortable and then take a plunge, because one thing I will say is this, and again, coming from a risk management background, the answer is this. You have a risk to lose money. You have a risk to gain money. If you do absolutely nothing, you're guaranteed 100% you're going to lose money, because it's already a no. But if you put some money down, you've actually got a chance to make some significant income. Give yourself a chance to have that wealth. I mean, that's why we came to this country.
Absolutely.
We're not here to be Canadians. Don't want to be in Canada to be broke. We're here to have better choices and have a better life. And this is a great way to start.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, sir.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely,
All right.
pleasure.
Yeah.